let's go on to the Broncos. They were 8-9 as well this year. They have the 12th pick in the draft. Broncos have missed the playoffs for 8 straight years after winning the Super Bowl, which is kind of crazy to think that. The Broncos have a pretty high standard in Denver of being one of the better franchises in the NFL. They've lost 8 straight games to the Raiders. This year, they finally broke a 16-game losing streak to the Chiefs. I mean, big struggles in the division. And as far as I saw, they're $24 million over the salary cap right now. They're heavily over the salary cap at the moment. This is not really one of the teams with the most desirable situations in the NFL at the moment. And I love your question, similar to what we just talked about with the Raiders. You said, WTF do you do at quarterback if you're a Denver Broncos fan right now? Because Russell Wilson expects to be cut in March. Jarrett Stidham is just not going to be the replacement. And do you really want to roll with one of those free agents? You could go after a Mitch Trubisky, a Sam Darnold, a Jacoby Brissett, but that's just, that's not going to work out.
You can have Tua.
Yeah, go. You can have Tua. I've seen Mac Jones mentioned. I've seen Justin Fields mentioned. Jimmy G, one of the rookies. What do you like if you were GM right now? If you're George Payton, what are you doing?
It's so tough to find ways to improve this team, right? You've got a solid offensive line. You've got decent receivers, though Jerry Jeudy's on the last year of his deal. You've got a defense that was horrible for much of the year with a few good performances. And if you're letting Russell Wilson go, he's not getting traded for the first round draft picks the Broncos paid to get for him, right? He's getting cut for nothing, maybe traded for a conditional 7th if there's a team that really likes him. So you don't have a lot of options. I think the Broncos' best option really is trying to trade to the top of the draft, give up whatever you have to, hope that Sean Payton's able to develop, whether it's Jayden Daniels or Drake May or whoever you're able to get at like that number 2, number 3 spot. See what you're able to do. But the free agents are incredibly uninspiring. They simply don't have the money, I think, or patience to sign Kirk Cousins. And otherwise...
No, they don't have the money.
Like, what are you going to do? You mentioned Jimmy G. He's one of the better free agent targets. He was terrible last year.
I mean, some people talked about Justin Fields. Could you trade for him?
You could, but Justin Fields is bad.
Justin Fields, you get with Sean Payton. I've seen some people say Baker Mayfield or Tannehill. Baker's going to go back to Tampa. I'm quite confident in that.
I'm not.
Really?
I think there's a chance he will, but Baker Mayfield could be getting a way bigger deal than people think this offseason. I would not be surprised to see Baker Mayfield sign an $80 million contract. I'm not sure the Buccaneers have the stomach for that.
Well, we'll get to Baker in the NFC South.
But again, you list those guys. None of those guys are all that exciting, right? Baker Mayfield's not taking you to a Super Bowl.
Fields, I think, could get the fan base excited a little bit with Sean Payton, but I doubt it would work out. That's where, do you really want to throw in all your marbles again? Like push in your chips on a top 3 selection in the draft right after it backfired so much on the Wilson trade. I mean, that's sort of what the NFL is about, is people are just afraid to make risks these days. But really the teams that hit on these quarterbacks are the ones, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Mahomes. Those are the teams that you see competing for the Super Bowl year in and year out. It's just, if this didn't work, now we're talking about a Broncos team that is really, really set back if they go from 12-3 and fail.
Yeah, but at a certain point, like I've said, you need action, right? This Broncos team simply has to do something. And I'm just not getting the sense that Sean Payton is content to ride it out with some mediocre quarterback, miss the playoffs for another year, and try and move on. Last year was a disappointing humiliation for Payton and Broncos fans alike.
But the thing, when I look at Denver, and it's a little different from... Vegas has some pieces in place that I really like. They have a few superstars on both sides of the ball, as you said, that are ready to win right now. Denver, I see Patrick Surtain on defense. And, there's a couple other guys there. And on offense, I'm really not in love with anybody. Cortland Sutton and Judy are okay threats at receiver. I'm not sure that the best thing for this team isn't to just sit tight at 12, get the best defensive player available or the best player available who falls. I've seen a lot of people have mocked, who is it? Terry and Arnold, the Alabama cornerback, to them, because they need a lot of help at corner too. They need a pass rusher. And in this draft where they're picking, there should be somebody. I'm not sure that the best case scenario for Denver isn't continue to rebuild and have a little patience here as opposed to push all your chips in on a quarterback who would be going into a kind of tricky situation. That's where I fall with Denver. I would stand pat. I know it's kind of boring, but for them, the best decision might be, roll out with one of those backup quarterbacks or someone, maybe it is Jimmy Garoppolo. It would suck, but I don't know if the team is ready to go in. And that's kind of cowardly as I'm saying it. I hear it, but that's sort of what I'm feeling with Denver. There's so many holes on that team.
Yeah, it would be short-sighted, I think, to try and move up and get a quarterback. But they're certainly going to be sending out feelers because really the alternative probably is Jameis Winston. I mean, Sean Payton liked Winston.
Situation to be.
No, it's the Russell Wilson deal wasn't a huge failure. It really set this team back for a long time. And it's going to be a long road.
Some people said Mac Jones as well.
But Mac Jones isn't good.
And I'm not trying to sell Mac Jones on you. I'm just saying people are saying Mac Jones.
No, I understand. I'm just, again, this types of quarterbacks, I think Jameis Winston, Mac Jones, and Gardner Minshew are sort of the best quarterbacks they could hope to get outside the draft. That's bad.
Yeah, I think what could work for them, and this is kind of a little risky, but if you go with the defensive player 12 and then see if one of those other three quarterbacks fall and gets into the 20s, and maybe you trade up and take a swing on one of them, that might feel a little, I would feel a little better about that than mortgaging the future for Jayden Daniels. I mean, these guys have question marks, all of them do. And Denver just seems like they're one big mistake away from really, really imploding even more, which is somehow could be possible. Okay, let's before we move on to the Chargers, who's your must keep and must target?
So must target for me, you've mentioned two big needs for them, cornerback and pass rusher. I actually believe in Baron Browning, I think a lot more than the average NFL fan. So I think edge rushers.
Who Baron Browning is a lot more than the average NFL fan.
I think he's going to have a real breakout year. So Broncos fans watch for that. So for me, I think their biggest need going in this offseason besides quarterback is cornerback. The player that I think they've got to get if they're able to get him, Chidobe Awuzie from the Bengals.
He's good.
He seems very unlikely to re-sign. He's one of those, he's not a lockdown elite corner one. But you don't need that if you're the Broncos. What you need is a reliable player who can step in, move Riley Moss down to cornerback 3, because you don't want him starting for you. And someone who can just match up next to Pat Surtain and be pretty good. He is exactly that guy.
And if you get a few pieces on defense in free agency, then maybe you're a little more inclined to take a swing on an offensive player in the draft.
I don't think that's how they should be thinking about it.
But
I mean, the offense is so much better than the defense in this draft. I mean, this is a terrible year to need defensive line. There are no defensive line prospects I unequivocally believe in, and none are going in the top 10. For a team that has their two huge needs at edge rusher and interior defensive line, that's not the news you want to hear. But it's just true. Then you talk about the player they need to keep. And Broncos fans are not going to want to hear this. I know they're going to be angry. I'm preparing for the comments. Again, this is more of a fact that the Broncos don't have any enormous free agents coming up than the fact that this player is really good. But I do think if I were the Broncos...
Walking it back a little bit.
No, if I'm the Broncos, there's a player that I really do want to keep, and that is Lloyd Cushenberry. Now look, is he the best player in the entire NFL? No. But he is an elite run blocker and a solid pass blocker at an important position on your offensive line. I know it's disappointing. This is like 2 times in a row I've picked center. But like, what am I going to pick? Lil Jordan Humphrey?
I saw a subreddit today of Broncos from Broncos Nation and Broncos Country. I'm sorry. I know that's a big distinction. Right. Yeah. And Lloyd Cushenberry's name came up and everybody wrote, God, no, let this guy go. God, no, let this guy go. But
yeah, that's exactly what you think until you have a bad center, right? He is a decent player and he's probably going to sign. I mean, my guess is he signs for like 3 years, 17 to 18 million a year. He's going to have a nice payday. The Broncos should be the one who give it to him.
Man, yeah, they're not going to be happy about that. But you're right. When you have a bad center, it sucks. So we'll see.
You and I know that better than anyone.
Dude, of course we do. Of course we do.